My greedy stepmother sneered your band from Dad's fortune, then ignored my calls to him, so I brought out the bank records that made her instantly choke hard on her morning coffee. The diamond necklace, glinting under the chandelier, felt like a noose tightening around Serafina's perfect throat. My dad's hand, cool and hesitant, finally found mine, a silent acknowledgement across a chasm of years. The call came during my morning shift at the cafe, right as I was trying to balance 3 steaming cappuccinos on a tray. The phone vibrated in my apron pocket, a low, persistent hum against my hip. I almost dropped everything when I saw my father's name on screen. He never called during work hours. That was our deal, a quiet agreement from years ago. My heart started thrumming a frantic rhythm against my ribs before I even answered, a premonition of unease washing over me. My name is Alara, and until that morning, I honestly thought I had my life pretty well figured out. Junior year of college, decent grades, and a part-time job that kept me in coffee and textbooks. Sure, things weren't perfect, but they were stable. At least, that's what I'd told myself. Hello. I wedged the phone between my ear and shoulder, setting down the drinks at table 7, my movements feeling oddly clumsy. It wasn't my father's familiar voice that responded. Alara, dear. The saccharine tone of my stepmother, Serafina, made my stomach clench, a cold knot forming deep within me. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I'm at work, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, a flat, even line that 3 years of practice had taught me how to perfectly craft for these conversations. Is everything okay with Dad? Oh, your father is fine. She paused, and I could practically see her perfectly manicured nails drumming against our kitchen counter, a silent, rhythmic tap against an unseen surface. I'm calling about the monthly support payments. The world tilted slightly on its axis. Those payments were my lifeline, covering rent, utilities, and a significant chunk of my tuition. Dad had promised they'd continue until I graduated, his quiet way of supporting my decision to live off campus, to carve my own path. What about them? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Well, dear, we've had some unexpected expenses come up. Your father and I have been discussing our finances, and we've decided it's time for you to become more independent. The payments will stop at the end of this month. The cappuccino on table 7 grew cold, a thin film forming on its surface, as I stood there, utterly frozen. Did he agree to this? My breath hitched. Of course he did. He's very proud of how responsible you've become. We both think you're ready to handle things on your own. What Serafina was doing wasn't just cruel, it was a textbook example of coercive control. By isolating me from my father and dismantling my financial stability, she was systematically undermining my sense of reality and self-worth, a common tactic in financial abuse designed to render victims utterly dependent. My coworker, Jude, caught my eye from behind the counter, pointing with a flick of his head at the growing line of customers. I held up one finger, trying to process what I was hearing, my mind a jumble of disbelief and cold dread. Can I talk to Dad? I pleaded, a desperate edge to my voice. He's in meetings all day, very busy with a new project. Serafina's voice softened, but it felt like false sympathy, a thin veneer of concern over something much colder. I know this might seem sudden, but you're a big girl now. 21 is plenty old enough to stand on your own 2 feet. I wanted to scream that this wasn't about age. It was about promises, about trust, about the agreement Dad and I had made before I chose my college and mapped out my entire future. Instead, I swallowed hard, the taste of ashes coating my tongue, and said, Right. Thanks for letting me know. I'm so glad you understand. Oh, and Alara. Her tone shifted slightly, almost triumphant. We'd appreciate it if you didn't bother your father about this. He's under enough stress as it is. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, the screen dark, noticing my hands were trembling, a faint tremor running through my arms. Earth to Alara? Jude appeared beside me, coffee pot in hand, his brow furrowed with concern. You okay? You look like you just saw a ghost. I'm fine, I said automatically, but my voice cracked on the second word, betraying the turmoil inside. Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. He studied my face, his gaze surprisingly gentle. Take 5 minutes. I'll cover your tables. I retreated to the break room, a small, cramped space smelling of stale coffee and cleaning supplies. Did some quick math on my phone's calculator, watching the numbers shrink and disappear. My chest tightened, a vice-like grip squeezing the air from my lungs. Even with my cafe wages, I'd be short on rent next month. Tuition payments loomed like storm clouds on the horizon, dark and ominous. As I splashed cold water on my face, the chill sharp against my skin, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Something in my expression had changed, hardened maybe, a new resolve setting in. Dad might have agreed to cut me off, but I knew Serafina's fingerprints were all over this decision, the same way they'd been all over every major change in our family for the past 3 years.
Fine.
If she wanted me to be independent, I'd show her independent. But first, I needed to figure out what was really going on with Dad's finances and why Serafina was so eager to keep me from talking to him about it. I pulled my hair back into a tight ponytail, the elastic biting into my scalp, and straightened my apron. I had 4 hours left in my shift to start planning my next move. And for the first time since Serafina entered our lives, I felt something beyond hurt and confusion. I felt angry. I spent that night going through old photos on my laptop, the screen illuminating my darkened apartment, searching for something I couldn't quite name. Maybe closure, maybe answers. The images flickered across my screen like scenes from someone else's life. Dad and me at my high school graduation, both of us grinning like idiots, his arms slung around my shoulders, my mortarboard slightly crooked. 3 years felt like 3 decades. My phone buzzed. Myra's name lit up the screen. "Please tell me you're not still obsessing over those photos," she said when I answered, her voice a welcome anchor in the storm of my thoughts. "I'm not obsessing." I clicked through another image. Dad's wedding to Serafina. My smile in that one looked more like a grimace, a forced curve that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm investigating." "Same thing." "Listen, I talked to my roommate. She's moving out next month to live with her boyfriend, so her room's yours if you want it. Way cheaper than your current place." I paused on a photo from Christmas 2 years ago. Dad had fallen asleep on the couch, a book open on his chest, and Serafina sat beside him, scrolling through her phone. Something about her expression made me uneasy, like she was plotting rather than relaxing, her gaze distant and calculating. "Alara? You still there?" "Yeah, sorry." I closed my laptop, the sudden darkness a stark contrast to the glowing screen. "Are you sure about the room? I don't want to impose." "Stop it. You're not imposing. You're saving me from having to interview random strangers from Craigslist. Plus, you make the best coffee in town." "That's just because I steal beans from work."
See?
"You're already the perfect roommate. Criminal tendencies and all." I laughed, but it felt hollow, the sound echoing unnaturally in the quiet room. Moving in with Myra would solve my immediate housing crisis, but it felt like admitting defeat, like proving Serafina right about my inability to stand on my own 2 feet. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "Well, think fast. Term starts in 3 weeks and—" Mira stopped mid-sentence. "Oh, speaking of term, have you checked your student account lately?" My stomach dropped, a sudden pit opening up inside me. "No, why?" "There's some issue with the financial aid office. Everyone's getting emails about verification or something." I scrambled to open my laptop again, the keyboard feeling cold beneath my fingertips, this time logging into my student portal. Sure enough, there was a notification. Additional documentation required for financial aid processing. My blood ran cold. "This can't be happening," I muttered, clicking through the requirements. They needed updated bank statements, tax returns, and my heart nearly stopped, a painful jolt in my chest. My father's financial information. "What's wrong?" Mira asked, her voice tight with concern. "They need Dad's signature on some forms and his tax returns." I ran a hand through my hair, tugging at the roots, the sensation oddly grounding. How am I supposed to get those without telling him what's happening? Maybe this is a sign that you should tell him?
You don't understand.
If I tell him, Serafina will twist it around somehow, make it seem like I'm being ungrateful or trying to cause problems. I thought about the way she looked at me during that last family dinner, like I was an inconvenient truth she couldn't quite figure out how to handle. I need to handle this myself. By doing what, exactly? Before I could answer, another call came through. Dad's number. My finger hovered over the accept button, a strange mix of hope and dread swirling within me. Mira, I have to go. Dad's calling.
Good.
Talk to him. I ended the call with Mira and took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves before answering. Hey, Dad. Princess? How's my favorite daughter? The familiar nickname, a relic from my childhood, hit me like a punch to the gut. I'm your only daughter, Dad. Still my favorite, he chuckled, and for a moment, he sounded like his old self, the warmth in his voice a stark contrast to the cold uncertainty that had become my reality. Listen, Serafina mentioned she talked to you about the finances. Here it was. My chance to ask him directly, to challenge what Serafina had told me. But something in his voice, a weariness I'd never heard before, a profound exhaustion, made me hesitate. Yes, she did. I kept my voice steady, an impressive feat given the storm raging inside me. It's fine, Dad. I understand. That's my girl. Always so independent. He paused, and I could hear the faint sound of him sighing. You know I'm proud of you, right? The words felt like ash in my mouth, bitter and dry. Thanks, Dad. I have to go. Early shift tomorrow. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the darkened laptop screen. The girl looking back at me seemed different from the one in those old photos, harder, more determined, a glint of steel in her eyes. I opened my phone and texted Mira. I'll take the room. Then I started making a list. If I was going to figure out what Serafina was really up to, I needed more than just suspicions. I needed proof. And I knew exactly where to start looking. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. Moving day with Mira should have been my biggest concern, a flurry of boxes and furniture. But life, it seemed, had other plans. I was sorting through my old room at Dad's house, the familiar scent of dusty books and old memories clinging to the air. He and Serafina were supposed to be at some charity lunch, a long, drawn-out affair I'd skillfully avoided. That's when I heard voices drifting up from the backyard patio, hushed but clear in the still afternoon air. The market's been good to us, Serafina was saying, her voice a smooth purr. We could easily get another 100,000 out of the investment account. I froze, a box of college textbooks heavy in my arms. Investment account? Dad had always said he kept everything in his checking and retirement funds, a simple, straightforward approach to money. I don't know, honey. Dad's voice sounded strained, a familiar note of uncertainty. That money was meant for what? Alara? She's handling things just fine on her own. You said so yourself. I set the box down silently, the thud muffled by the carpet, and crept closer to the window. Through the gaps in the blinds, I could see them sitting at the patio table. Serafina wore one of her designer sundresses, the kind that probably cost more than my monthly rent, its vibrant colors almost painfully bright against the verdant lawn. Besides, she continued, her voice unwavering, the contractor needs the deposit by Friday if we want to start the renovation next month. Renovation? I thought about my student loan application, still sitting incomplete on my laptop, a digital placeholder for a future I was struggling to secure. The house is fine as it is, Dad said, but his tone had that familiar weakness to it, the same one he'd had when Serafina convinced him to sell Mom's old piano, a cherished family heirloom. Darling, we talked about this. If we're going to host the holiday party for your firm's partners, everything needs to be perfect. She reached across the table, touching his hand, her long, elegant fingers brushing his. Don't you want to make a good impression? This could mean a partnership for you. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Mira wondering where I was, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, my attention completely riveted on the scene unfolding before me. You're right, Dad sighed, a sound of resignation. You're always right about these things. Of course, I am. Serafina's laugh tinkled like broken glass, a sharp, unpleasant sound that sent shivers down my spine. I'll call the contractor today. Oh, and we should look at updating my car while the market's good. The lease is almost up, and I saw the most gorgeous Mercedes yesterday. I backed away from the window, my hands shaking so violently I had to grip them together. The investment account, the renovations, the new car. Meanwhile, I was working double shifts and eating ramen to make ends meet. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. "Where are you?" Mira asked, her voice laced with impatience. "Jude and I have been waiting with the truck for 20 minutes. Something came up. My voice sounded strange even to me, thin and reedy. "I need to check something first." "Check what?" "Alara, what's going on?" I was already moving down the hallway, toward Dad's home office, a space I hadn't entered since before Mom died. Remember how Dad used to let me handle some of his online banking back when Mom was sick? Yeah. I wonder if those login credentials still work. Myra's voice held a warning. "Whatever you're thinking." I hung up before she could talk me out of it. Dad's computer hummed to life, the familiar desktop appearing on the screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard as doubt crept in, a cold, insidious whisper. This wasn't just snooping. This was probably illegal. But then I remembered Serafina's casual mention of another 100,000 while I was drowning in financial aid forms. The old password worked on the third try, a jolt of triumph mixed with fear. Within minutes, I was staring at account statements I'd never seen before, investment accounts, hidden savings, and, "Oh my God," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. There it was, a recurring monthly transfer to my old account, the one Dad had set up for my college expenses. The same amount as always, every month like clockwork. The money hadn't stopped at all. It was being redirected to an account in Serafina's name. Footsteps on the stairs sent me scrambling, a surge of adrenaline pulsing through my veins. I closed windows, shut down the computer, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I barely made it back to my room before I heard them in the hallway. "Oh, Alara." Serafina's surprise sounded perfectly rehearsed, a performance honed to perfection, when she saw me. "We didn't know you were here, dear." Just getting the last of my things, I hefted the box of textbooks, grateful it hid my trembling hands, providing a convenient shield for my shock. Dad smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, a faint shadow of worry lingering there. "Need any help?" "No, thanks." I managed a tight smile, the muscles in my face feeling stiff and unnatural. "I've got it under control." And I did. For the first time since this whole mess started, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. The question now was, what was I going to do about it? As I walked past Serafina, she gave me one of her practiced smiles, her lips curving into a pleasant, empty shape. She had no idea I'd just discovered her secret. No idea what was coming. That would change soon enough. The bank statement felt heavy in my hands as I sat in Myra's living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, the chaos a mirror of my own mind. 3 months of redirected payments, each one a stark record of betrayal, neatly laid out in digital numbers. My fingers traced the routing information, memorizing Serafina's account details like a battle plan. "You need to tell your dad," Mira said, perched on the arm of the couch, her gaze intense. "This is literally theft." "It's not that simple." I folded the paper carefully, tucking it into my laptop case, the edges crisp against my skin. "If I go to him now, Serafina will just spin some story about protecting the money for my future or whatever garbage she's good at making up." My phone lit up with a text from Jude. "Your stepmother is here ordering your usual table's worth of fancy lattes." I sat up straighter, a jolt of recognition hitting me. Serafina never came to my side of town unless she wanted something. The cafe was only 2 blocks away. "I have to go," I said, already reaching for my shoes, my heart beginning to pound with renewed purpose. Mira grabbed my arm. "Wait, what are you planning?" "Nothing. I just need to see something." The walk to the cafe felt like crossing a battlefield, each step measured and deliberate. Through the front window, I could see Serafina holding court at my regular table, her designer handbag occupying the chair where I usually sat. Jude caught my eye as I entered, giving me a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement of the impending confrontation. Alara. Serafina's voice carried across the cafe, drawing the attention of several customers. What a lovely surprise. Join me. Several customers turned to watch as I approached the table, the hushed whispers filling the air. Serafina's smile never wavered, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her cup, a telltale sign of tension. I was just telling your charming coworker about our renovation plans, she said as I sat down, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Your father is so excited about the new kitchen. I bet he is. I kept my voice neutral, watching her face, searching for a crack in her flawless facade. Must be expensive. Oh, you know how these things are. She waved her hand dismissively, a practiced gesture of nonchalance. But we're being very careful with our finances. Speaking of which, she leaned forward, lowering her voice. I noticed you were in the house yesterday when we came home. My heart skipped a beat, a cold dread washing over me, but I forced myself to meet her gaze, my expression unwavering. Just getting the last of my things, of course. She took a sip of her latte, leaving a perfect lipstick print on the rim. You know, your father mentioned something interesting this morning. Apparently, his computer showed some unusual login activity yesterday. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Behind the counter, Jude was very deliberately not looking our way, his back to us, as he cleaned an already spotless espresso machine. Really? I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. Serafina's smile turned sharp at the edges, a predatory glint in her eyes. We changed all the passwords, of course, just to be safe. You understand completely. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, a harsh sound in the sudden silence. Is that all you wanted to tell me? She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Actually, I brought you something. A little housewarming gift. Inside was a check for $5,000. Consider it a fresh start, she said softly, her voice an insidious whisper. A chance to prove you really can be independent without needing to investigate things that don't concern you. The check burned in my hands, a crisp white rectangle of temptation. $5,000. Enough to cover next semester's tuition deposit with some leftover for books. All I had to do was take it and walk away, disappear into the quiet anonymity of my own life. That's very generous, I said carefully, placing the check on the table, not touching it. But I think I'll stick with my current plan. And what plan is that? The warmth had vanished from her voice, replaced by a cutting iciness. I guess you'll find out. I turned and walked away, my legs shaking, a tremor running through me, but my head held high, a fragile defiance. Behind me, I heard the sharp click of Serafina's heels as she stood. Your father won't believe you, she called after me, her voice cutting through the cafe's hum. He never does. I paused at the door, looking back at her perfectly composed face, a mask of sophisticated malice. We'll see about that. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright, too harsh, almost accusatory. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Smart girl. But this won't end well for anyone. Think about your father. I took a screenshot of the message before blocking the number. Serafina thought she was warning me off, trying to intimidate me. But she'd just made a crucial mistake. She'd shown me she was scared. Now I just had to figure out exactly what she was scared of. What I found next changed everything. I found the first letter while helping Jude sort through old mail at the cafe, tucked away in a dusty stack of forgotten papers. It was addressed to my father, postmarked 3 months ago, from his company's accounting department. My hands trembled as I slid it into my apron pocket, the crinkle of the paper loud in my ears. You know that's a federal offense, right? Jude said. His eyes, however, were kind, a silent reassurance. Added to my growing list of crimes, I muttered, tying my hair back, preparing for the morning rush. Did you know Serafina has been coming in every day this week? Yeah, always when you're not here. Asking weird questions about your schedule, your friends. He hesitated. Your dad came in yesterday, too. My stomach lurched, a sickening drop. What? Why didn't you tell me? Because he looked terrible, Alara. Like he hasn't slept in days. He kept asking if you seemed okay, if you needed anything. The morning crowd started filtering in before I could respond, their chatter filling the air. As I worked the espresso machine, my mind raced. Dad never came to this part of town unless he had to, and he definitely never checked up on me through other people. During my break, I opened the letter, my fingers fumbling with the seal. Inside was a notice about unauthorized changes to Dad's retirement account beneficiaries. All funds had been redirected to a single beneficiary, Serafina. My phone buzzed, a text from Mira. Your stepmom's at our apartment. I nearly dropped the phone. What? Why? Says she's dropping off more of your stuff, but she's just sitting here asking questions about your classes, your study habits. It's creepy. Don't tell her anything. I'm on my way. Wait, there's something else. Has she mentioned your mom? I froze, halfway through untying my apron strings. What about her? Something about your mom's old medical bills. Said your dad's still paying them off. That couldn't be right. Mom's insurance had covered everything. I'd helped with the paperwork myself. Get her out of there. I texted back, my fingers flying across the screen. I don't care how, just get her to leave. Alara? Jude's voice made me jump. He was holding out a fancy envelope. She left this for you this morning. Said it was important. Inside was an invitation to Dad's firm's holiday party, scheduled for next month. A handwritten note in Serafina's elegant script read, "Families should stick together. Last chance to make the right choice." I crumpled the invitation, my anger flaring. I need to leave early, I said, already clearing it with management. Jude grabbed my bag from under the counter. But first, there's something you should see. He pulled up a social media post on his phone, a photo from one of Dad's colleagues. It showed Serafina at some charity event last week, wearing a diamond necklace that looked eerily familiar. Isn't that your mom's? Jude zoomed in on the image, his eyes meeting mine. You showed me a picture once, remember? The necklace had been my grandmother's, passed down to Mom. Dad had kept it in his office safe after she died, promising it would be mine someday. My vision blurred, a wave of nausea washing over me. She's not just stealing money, I whispered, the words barely audible. She's erasing everything. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a call from Dad. As I stared at his name on the screen, another text from Mira came through. She's going through your room, looking for something specific. The letter about the retirement account felt heavy in my pocket. Whatever Serafina was searching for, she was getting desperate. And desperate people made mistakes. I'm not answering, I said, declining Dad's call, the screen going dark. Not yet. Alara. Jude's voice held a warning, a note of deep concern. I know what I'm doing. I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt, my voice trembling slightly. She wants to play family?
Fine.
Tell her I'll be at the holiday party. And then what? I thought about Mom's necklace, about the redirected payments, about Dad's exhausted face asking strangers if I was okay. Then I show everyone exactly who Serafina really is. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door, starting with what's in that safe. As I left, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. You're just like your mother. She didn't know when to stop either. The threat was clear, cold, and calculating. But Serafina had made a crucial mistake. She'd mentioned Mom's medical bills. Files. I knew better than anyone. Now I just had to prove what I'd suspected all along. Those bills she claimed Dad was still paying didn't exist at all. The hospital records were gone. Not just misplaced or misfiled, but completely erased from the system. I sat in my old volunteer coordinator's office, staring at the empty search results on her computer screen, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, casting a harsh glow. I'm sorry, Alara, Susan said, genuine concern in her voice. The records from your mother's day should be here, but... She gestured helplessly at the screen, her hand hovering over the blank space. It's like they never existed. My hands clenched in my lap, knuckles white. When was the last system update? 3 months ago. She checked her calendar, tapping a finger on the date. Right after that new privacy compliance initiative. 3 months ago. The same time Serafina had started redirecting Dad's payments. The same time she'd begun talking about Mom's supposed ongoing medical bills. My phone buzzed. Dad calling again, the 4th time today. I silenced it, just as Myra's text came through. Police just left our apartment. Someone reported suspicious activity. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright, the office too small, closing in on me. Thanks, Susan, I mumbled, pushing my chair back. I need to go. Outside, the November wind cut through my jacket, a sharp, icy bite against my skin. I'd spent my entire weekend searching for proof, bank statements, insurance records, anything to show what Serafina was really doing with Dad's money. But she'd been thorough, erasing evidence faster than I could find it. My phone rang again. Jude this time. She's here, he said without preamble, his voice urgent. At the cafe. With your dad. My heart stopped, a sickening lurch in my chest. What? They're asking about you. About whether you've seemed unstable lately. She's showing him something on her phone, texts or emails, I think. Of course. All my desperate searches, my clumsy attempts at investigation, she'd been tracking everything, building her case while I built mine. The way Serafina moved to discredit me, painting me as unstable or paranoid, was a classic defense mechanism often seen in manipulative individuals. This tactic, known as DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender, aims to flip the script, turning the accuser into the accused and diverting attention from the perpetrator's own transgressions. Don't go back to your apartment, Jude continued, his voice strained. Mira says they took your laptop. They what? My voice cracked. A pathetic sound. All my screenshots, the bank statements, the letter about the retirement account, everything was on that laptop. Your stepmom suggested it. Said she's worried about your mental health, that you've been obsessing over conspiracy theories about her. I leaned against a nearby wall, suddenly dizzy, the world swaying around me. What did Dad say? He looked convinced, Alara. I think you need to. The call dropped abruptly. My phone screen went black, then lit up with a final message from an unknown number. Check your bank account. With trembling fingers, I pulled up my banking app. My modest savings. My carefully budgeted checking account. Both completely empty. A single transaction note appeared on each account. Frozen pending investigation. My vision blurred, tears stinging my eyes. Without that money, I couldn't pay for next semester, couldn't buy groceries, couldn't even buy a bus ticket home if I wanted to. A new text from Mira. They're saying you hacked your dad's accounts. That you're the one who's been stealing money. Serafina has proof. Of course she did. She'd probably been planning this since the day I discovered those transfers, waiting for me to make exactly these moves. Every attempt I'd made to expose her had only given her more ammunition. My phone rang one final time. Dad again. This time I answered. Princess. His voice was soft, worried, laced with an overwhelming disappointment that cut deeper than any anger. We need to talk about what's been going on. Dad, whatever she told you. I've seen the evidence, sweetheart. The unauthorized account access, the obsessive behavior, the paranoid accusations. He sighed heavily, a sound of profound weariness. I know losing your mom was hard, but this isn't the way to handle it. This isn't about Mom, but even as I said it, I realized that's exactly what Serafina wanted him to think. That I was just a grieving daughter lashing out at my stepmother, inventing conspiracies to cope with loss. Come home, he said, his voice pleading. We'll get you help. There's a great therapist that Serafina knows. I hung up, sliding down the wall until I hit the sidewalk, the cold concrete seeping through my clothes. She'd won. Everything I tried to prove had been turned against me, making me look exactly like what she'd claimed, an unstable, jealous kid who couldn't accept her new stepmother. My phone lit up with one final message from Serafina herself. The holiday party is tomorrow night. Come home now, apologize publicly, and this all goes away. Or don't, and see what happens next. Your choice, dear. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting my own defeated face back at me. She'd taken everything. My money, my credibility, my relationship with Dad. Everything except my next move. The holiday party buzzed with forced laughter and clinking glasses, the sound a brittle counterpoint to the tension thrumming beneath the surface. I stood in the entrance of Dad's newly renovated living room, a space that felt utterly foreign to me, wearing Mom's old black dress, its velvet soft against my skin. I watched Serafina hold court near the fireplace, surrounded by a deferential crowd. Mom's necklace glittered at her throat, catching the light. "You came." Jude appeared beside me, looking uncomfortable in his borrowed suit, his eyes wide with apprehension. "Are you sure about this?" I clutched my phone tighter, feeling the weight of the email I'd just received. "Did you bring what I asked for?" He slipped a USB drive into my hand, small and cold against my palm. "Security footage from the cafe. Every conversation she's had there for the past month." "Alara." Dad's voice boomed across the room, cutting through the chatter. He hurried over, relief evident on his face. "I'm so glad you decided to. Is that my necklace?" The words came out sharper than I intended, cutting through the party chatter, silencing the room. Serafina touched the diamonds at her throat, her smile never wavering, a practiced gesture of elegance. "Wyatt gave it to me, dear. A birthday present, really." I pulled at my phone, the screen bright in the dim light. "That's not what the insurance company says." Her smile flickered, a tiny crack at her facade. Dad looked between us, confusion creasing his forehead, his gaze moving from me to Serafina and back again. "What are you talking about?" "The necklace was reported stolen 3 months ago." I held up my phone, showing the email, along with several other pieces of Mom's jewelry. "The claim was filed under your name, Dad, but you didn't file it, did you?" "Serafina?" Dad turned to his wife, his voice now laced with a dawning suspicion. "What is she talking about?" "She's obviously confused again." Serafina stepped forward, reaching for Dad's arm, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "Remember what the therapist said? About the therapist you invented?" I pulled up another email, the one whose bills you've been charging to Dad's account. "I call the office." They've never heard of him. The party guests had gone silent, watching the scene unfold, their drinks forgotten, expressions ranging from bewilderment to dawning comprehension. Serafina's perfectly manicured nails dug into Dad's sleeve, a desperate grip. "While we're talking about bills," I continued, my voice steady now, resolute, "let's discuss Mom's medical expenses, the ones you told Dad he was still paying off." I turned to Dad, meeting his gaze. "Did you ever actually see those bills?" "They're handled automatically," he said slowly, his eyes wide with a horrifying realization. "Serafina set up the payments because there are no bills, Dad. I have proof from the hospital. Everything was paid in full before Mom died. The money's been going somewhere else." "Enough." Serafina's voice cracked like a whip, her carefully constructed composure finally crumbling. "Wyatt, she's clearly having another episode. We should." "Should what?" I stepped closer, my voice low and fierce. "Call the police, like you did yesterday. Funny thing about that, they're very interested in the fraud complaints I filed this morning, especially the part about you impersonating Dad to redirect his accounts." Dad pulled away from Serafina, his face ashen, betraying a profound shock and disgust. "What accounts?" "Show him." I told Jude. He connected the USB drive to the TV, the large screen flickering to life, pulling up security footage from the cafe. There was Serafina, clearly visible, using Dad's phone to access his banking app while he was in the bathroom. "You don't understand," Serafina said, but her composure was cracking now, visibly shattering. "I was protecting us, building a future. By stealing my college fund?" The anger I'd been holding back for months finally broke through, a torrent of raw emotion. "By having my accounts frozen? By wearing my dead mother's jewelry while telling Dad I'm crazy?" "Wyatt." She turned to my father, desperate now, her eyes pleading. "I can explain everything. The money's still there. Just what?" Dad's voice was quiet, dangerously so, laced with a cold fury I'd never heard before. Just stole from my daughter? Just lied about my late wife's medical bills? Just tried to convince me our child was mentally ill? The necklace at Serafina's throat suddenly looked like a noose, a symbol of her undoing. She reached for the clasp with trembling fingers. "Keep it," I said coldly, my voice cutting through the silence. "The police will want it as evidence anyway." The sound of sirens filtered through the party, growing louder, cutting through the stunned silence. Serafina's face went pale, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the terror in her eyes. "I did everything for us," she whispered, but she wasn't looking at Dad anymore. She was looking at me, her gaze filled with a desperate, wounded accusation. "You have no idea what it's like to have nothing, to need to protect yourself." "You're right," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. "I don't know what that's like, but I know what it's like to lose everything. And now, so will you." The police entered as Serafina sank into a chair, her perfect world crumbling around her. Dad moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine for the first time in years, a comforting pressure. The necklace caught the light one last time as they led her away, diamonds sparkling like tears. Spring came early that year, a gentle balm after a long, cold winter. I sat in Dad's garden, the morning sun warm on my face, watching him struggle with Mom's old rose bushes. 3 months had passed since Serafina's arrest, but some wounds, I knew, were still fresh, still raw. "You're doing it wrong," I said, moving to help him with the pruning shears, their blades glinting in the light. "Mom always cut at an angle, remember?" He handed me the tools without argument, a small smile playing on his lips. We worked in comfortable silence, the snip-snip of the shears the only sound, until his phone buzzed. "Another email from Serafina's lawyers," he said, not looking up from the roses, his voice flat. "They're offering a plea deal. She'll return everything she took, plus interest, in exchange for what we drop the additional fraud charges. Let her serve a shorter sentence." He pulled a worn envelope from his pocket. "She wrote you a letter." I stared at the envelope, dirt under my fingernails, remembering how Serafina's perfectly manicured hands had once held Mom's necklace. "Did you read it?"
No.
"But her lawyer mentioned." He hesitated, snipping a dead rose head. "She grew up in foster care, aged out of the system with nothing. Apparently, she's been running similar schemes for years, always targeting widowers with college-age kids." The letter felt heavier than paper should, a tangible weight in my hand. "That doesn't make it okay." "No, it doesn't," Dad agreed, touching one of Mom's roses gently. "But it might help explain some things." Serafina's letter, revealing her past in foster care, offered a chilling glimpse into the roots of her actions. While it didn't excuse her behavior, it highlighted how profound early life trauma, particularly the fear of scarcity and abandonment, can shape an individual's worldview, driving them towards extreme and often destructive measures to secure a perceived sense of safety or control. My phone chimed, an email notification. I've been getting a lot of those lately. Ever since the story broke, local newspapers loved the drama. Wealthy widow's daughter exposes stepmother's fraud ring. The university had even featured me in their alumni newsletter after I won the emergency scholarship that had seen me through the semester. "Jude asked me out," I said suddenly, surprising myself, "for coffee. Somewhere that isn't the cafe." Dad smiled, a real smile, like the ones from before, full and genuine. "Oh, smart boy. Took him long enough." "I haven't said yes yet." "But you will." He gestured at the garden, a sweep of his hand. "You're your mother's daughter. You never could resist fixing broken things." I looked down at Serafina's letter, still unopened, the words on the envelope a silent challenge. "Some things can't be fixed." "No," he agreed, his gaze distant, thoughtful. "But they can be understood. Sometimes that's enough." Later that evening, I sat in my new apartment, a small studio I could afford with my reinstated college fund and cafe wages, and finally opened the letter. Serafina's elegant handwriting filled the page. "Dear Alara, you remind me so much of myself at your age. The determination, the need to protect what's yours. I saw it the moment we met, and it terrified me. I thought I could control you the way I controlled everything else in my life. I was wrong. I won't ask for forgiveness. What I did to you, to your father, to the memory of your mother, it's unforgivable. But I want you to know that the fear never goes away. The fear of losing everything, of returning to nothing. I thought having money would fix it. I was wrong about that, too. You're stronger than I ever was. You fought for your family instead of trying to replace it. Keep fighting. I folded the letter carefully and reached for my phone. Jude's number was still up on the screen, waiting for my response about coffee. Hey, I typed. Tomorrow works. But not at our cafe. I know a better place. The garden center down the street had a small coffee shop. Mom used to take me there when I was little, letting me pick out seeds for our section of the garden. Dad had forgotten about it over the years, but I hadn't. Maybe it was time to plan something new. My phone buzzed again. Mira this time, asking if I was still coming to her graduation party next week. Then another text from Dad. Found Mom's old gardening journal. Want to help me restart her butterfly garden? I looked around my small apartment, at the potted plants on every windowsill, at the framed photo of Mom and me in her garden, at the future I was finally building for myself. Yes, I replied to both messages. Some things couldn't be fixed, but others could grow back stronger if you knew how to tend them. Mom had taught me that long before Serafina tried to make me forget. I placed the letter in my desk drawer, next to the scholarship certificate and the cafe security footage, reminders not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd fought to keep. Tomorrow, I'd plant roses with Dad. But tonight, I had some seeds of my own to sow. How do you reconcile the understanding of someone's traumatic past with the harm they've inflicted, and what responsibility, if any, do victims have in that reconciliation?